I'm Lieutenant General Sumida, the commander of the Ground Component Command GCC. It is my honor to have this opportunity to speak to you. This is my agenda with humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, HADR operation at the scene. In Japan, there are densely populated areas scattered in each area. First, Tokyo is certainly one of them. Osaka, that recently hosted the G20 summit and located in between Tokyo and Osaka, Nagoya has a population of more than 10 million people, classifying it as a megacity. As the commander of the GCC, in charge of integrated nationwide ground self-defense force operations, I'm always thinking of how to respond to the megacity such as Osaka and Nagoya, while also keeping in mind the characteristics of densely populated areas all across the country, to include Sapporo, Fukuoka, and such, while also contemplating ways to prevent the situation that threatens peace and security in the relevant major cities, and how to deploy personnel smoothly from across the country to deal with any situation that may arise. Today, based on my experience as a former commanding general of the Eastern Army, I would like to focus on the disaster response in Tokyo, the capital city of Japan and the largest megacity. First, I would like to talk about characteristics of Tokyo as a megacity. The population of Tokyo is approximately 13,880,000 people. That is equivalent to 10% of Japan's total population. In terms of population density, there are more than 6,000 people per square kilometer, indicating a high concentration. If neighboring Kanagawa Prefecture and Chiba Prefecture included, the number would reach approximately 38 million people. Another characteristic is that a large number of commuters flowing to Tokyo during the daytime. The influx of the daytime population reached its peak in 1995 with 3.72 million people and has been gradually decreasing, and as of 2015 is down to 3.18 million people. And while various activities are being carried out during the day, making it for a lively environment, it also bears the risk of having a large number of people becoming stranded in the event of a disaster. At the time of the Great East Japan earthquake, it is estimated that approximately 3.52 million people became stranded. In addition to the concentration of population and being the center of government and economy, there are high-rise apartments and offices, facilities such as commercial complexes, subways, expressways, etc., where people gather, and water, sewage, and gas are layered and crisscrossed on top of each other. For this reason, unseen victims may be trapped in a steril environment, making search and rescue activities extremely difficult, and a large amount of debris hinders the activities of the rescue units. Also, special measures will be necessary for those foreigners living in and tourists visiting Tokyo in order to ensure their safety. If you look at this picture, you'll be able to visualize how the greater metropolitan area expands with Tokyo as its center. While there are many modernized buildings, there is an old downtown district area where old wooden houses are concentrated along the Arakawa and the Sumida River. In these areas, during an earthquake, many houses without earthquake-resistant structure will collapse, and fires that occur may spread over the narrow alleys of wooden houses in the blink of an hour, causing a major fire. In addition, there are many elderlies living alone in old downtown district, which makes search and rescue activities in these areas more difficult than the other more modernized area. In the Tokyo Bay Area, reclamation has been occurring since the Edo period, but the reclamation accelerated especially after the Showa period, along with Tokyo's economic population growth. That resulted in a total landfill area
equals to 4 wards of Chiyoda, Chuo, Minato, and Shibuya wards. And in these areas, it is expected that there may be flooding and or liquefaction due to a tsunami. In addition, this area has a number of industrial complexes and heavy industries in operation that may cause secondary damage to harbors and port facilities due to toxic chemicals leaking out. In summary, Tokyo at the time of a major disaster could face complex problems such as collapse of concrete structures, fires, liquefaction, and contamination by chemical materials, and causing major issues to people, including central government and economy, young and old, domestic and foreign tourists, etc., which in turn means that operations will be conducted in a complex environment in which a variety of situations in both hard and soft occur simultaneously in parallel, to include human factors such as the stranded personnel. Next, I talk about the characteristics of JSDF response. In the case of a disaster, it is extremely important to work in cooperation with relevant organizations promptly and to save as many lives as possible within the first 72 hours after, with the survival rates decline rapidly. As there is a high possibility that it will be difficult to approach the affected areas, especially the heavily devastated area due to collapsed buildings, fires, and liquefaction, etc. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport has developed a plan known as Tokyo Inland Earthquake Hasty Road Clearing Plan, also known as 8-direction road clearing strategy, to immediately clear the roads after the disaster. In this plan, routes heading towards downtown Tokyo from 8 directions are designated with the highest priority for clearing within the first 48 hours. In conjunction with this plan is the importance of taking measures such as clarifying the framework of who has priority use of the road, such as JSDF, the police, and the fire department once opened. In addition, it is effective not only to use land routes based mainly on the 8-direction road clearing strategy, but also the use of the waterways such as Tokyo Bay and river system, or even air routes to concentrate personnel and equipment. The Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade ARDB, equipped with boats and amphibious vehicles, could use the waterways to transport personnel, and to be able to insert personnel from the air, it is necessary for the 1st Airborne Brigade with the air assault capability to coordinate closely with the Maritime and Air Self-Defense Force to maximize its use. At this time, the use of sea basing, which uses naval vessel as a base for units operating on land, along with the use of maritime and air self-defense force bases and a commercial vessel, is extremely useful. Therefore, to maximize the use of land, maritime, and air assets, a joint task force needs to be established at an early stage to conduct immediate relief operations. In addition, there is a risk that if the Prime Minister's Office, Ministry of Defense, and joint staff should be damaged, it has a possibility of hampering the disaster relief capabilities and in turn making it hard to respond quickly to the disaster. In that case, depending on the situation, it is estimated that Ground Component Command Headquarters, where I work, located in Camp Asaka, will suffer minimal damage and have sufficient command functions, and therefore assumptions may need to be made to transfer MOD and joint staff functions from Ichigaya to Camp Asaka. The Eastern Army takes on the role for the immediate rescue operations. In this case, it is necessary that once the rescue units from the ground, maritime, and air self-defense forces, which gathered all over Japan, arrive in Tokyo area, they must provide rescue units to the Eastern Army to smoothly, promptly start operations. For this reason, depending on the road clearance status, it is necessary for the forward objective of the units to be flexibly and appropriately selected and continuously command the units even while en route. Furthermore, personnel and equipment with special capabilities are required to deal with toxic chemicals from industrial complexes and accidents at nuclear power plants. The Ground Component Command possesses the Central NBC Protection Unit, and a counter NBC unit with special capabilities and equipment to respond to these incidents, and therefore must plan to maximize the use of these units to rescue lives and minimize damage. In this case, needless to say, even with the disaster relief efforts going on, the readiness posture for the defense of Japan and any other contingencies cannot be affected. In fact, even during the Great East Japan earthquake, while JSDF was responding to the disaster, foreign military aircraft from other nations approached Japanese airspace as if to explore the capability of the JSDF. Therefore, JSDF must maintain a defense posture to react to any situation to be able to protect the lives and the property of the people, and with maximum efforts carry out rescue and hasty recovery operations. For this reason, from peacetime, GCC is responsible for devising the optimal solution for integrated operations of the GSDF units nationwide. Next, I talk about coordination with related organizations supporting nations and U.S. forces. In the event of a disaster, cooperation with the local government is essential. The key for flexible and swift response on site is building a close relationship with the local government and local residents from peacetime by planning response in various situations. In recent years, retired Self-Defense Force personnel have assumed offices as disaster prevention directors and supervisors at local governments and have been using their experiences to the fullest. But it is extremely effective in strengthening the cooperation and therefore need to be expanded upon further starting in peacetime. In addition, based on the lessons learned from the Great East Japan earthquake, it is necessary to establish coordination guidelines in advance with the domestic and international volunteer organizations such as Red Cross and organizations which are expected to be active in the affected area. In order to maximize the strength of the JTF and to be able to project ground units, it is important to secure land routes along with sea airports which are indispensable for maritime and operations. For the execution of the 8-direction operations mentioned earlier, it is absolutely imperative that coordination and cooperation with the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport and other government organizations in regard to finding the possible use of airports and seaports that will contribute to the concentration of personnel using the sea and air routes. Clarifying points of contact, work procedures, and implement joint training occur during peacetime. In addition, since the police and fire department that operate in a disaster area and the self-defense force have different authority and capability, further cooperation are necessary to effectively carry out rescue operations without issues. The Operation Tomodachi conducted in response to the Great East Japan earthquake is still vivid in most of our minds. And with earthquake occurring in various locations, the cooperation received from the United States is not only important but encouraging also. In the GCC headquarters has a unit called Bilateral Coordination Department designated for close liaison and coordination with the U.S. Army and Marine Corps from peacetime. Utilization of this relationship from peacetime is essential in dealing with Tokyo inland earthquake. However, in the case of the Tokyo inland earthquake, it is my understanding that DART and USAID will be the main body of U.S. cooperation. At the present, since they are no organization that we normally cooperate with, I believe that it is necessary to establish and strengthen cooperation in the future through the U.S. military and the Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA. Within 2 months of the Great East Japan earthquake occurring, emergency relief teams and medical support teams from 23 nations and regions came to Japan and operated in the affected areas. Also, there were teams from UN OCHA and other UN-related organizations operating in Japan at the time. Although these support teams have been working hard in cooperation with the SDF, police, and fire departments, there need to be diplomatic considerations when properly selecting their legal standings and areas of operation for these teams. I understand that these are mainly coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. However, it is also necessary to actively communicate opinions from the field. Next, I talk about the proactive response to fulfill the expected role of GCC.
based on the operational environment described to this point and the characteristics of the JSDF activities, I would like to touch on the advanced preparation of GCC should do, especially with information collection using the latest technology. In a megacity where complexity and uncertainty are some of the characteristics, and in order to start operations swiftly and dispatch unit to the affected area, it is extremely important to focus on the information collected, analyzed, evaluated during the peacetime, along with real-time information gathered on the affected area. I would like to introduce you 3 information collecting technologies that have interested me in the recent years with their innovative progress. First is the use of AI and disaster relief drones. Utilizing AI in disaster response is extremely effective in ways such as determining where the victims are located, determining the route of the movement for units, matching the unit size to the damage situation, and estimating the type and amount of relief supplies required are some of the possible usages. Also, in recent years, it is extremely important to utilize the evolving drones to immediately share the current situation of the affected areas between the Prime Minister's office, Ichigaya, and the GCC headquarters, and providing information for unit deployed at the necessary time and place, and thus further fielding of drones and strengthening of the video transmission capabilities will be required in the future. Next, utilizing cutting-edge map data technology. Information from existing maps and photographs are little help to those personnel in affected area, where the topography and landscape have changed dramatically due to the disaster. Technology such as creating a 3D image map from photos taken with a drone, or creating 3D graphics with precise details of the underground complexes are extremely effective for information acquisition of areas that are difficult to maneuver through due to the disaster, and therefore all units operating on site should be fielded with these equipment. It is also important to create share maps in advance for the underground areas which are not visible from the ground nor air. The last one is utilization of SNS. Initially, the situation in the disaster area is unknown, and communication infrastructure such as cell phones are also damaged, making it difficult to grasp the situation of the affected areas and people. In addition, the need of the affected people vary depending on the season and the local areas when the disaster occurred, and the needs are constantly changing, make it extremely difficult to obtain necessary information in a timely manner. In the case of Great East Japan earthquake, there were a large number of postings on SNS requesting rescue and materials that were needed in the local area. By processing such an enormous amount of information for requests as big data and using it for the units responding to the disaster will give means to enable flexible response adapted to the situation. Furthermore, the JSDF activities, especially en route useful movement, can be transmitted using SNS, thus helping reduce traffic congestion on their routes, and can also be used for information operation (IO) to smoothly facilitate operations. Now I'd like to show you a short video demonstrating information collection in developed city areas using latest Japanese technology. I'll show you an image of 3D map. You can see that Tokyo is such a giant city. Using photos taken from above to create 3D maps. On the other hand, Tokyo is a spherical city, widely expanding underground. We can use a portable laser measuring tools for underground spaces. On 3D maps, we are able to layer grid coordinates necessary for JSDF operations. With the 3D maps,
it is easy to grasp areas crowded with wooden structures and also easy to pinpoint exact location from photos. We can check landing routes images for helicopters and airborne troops in advance. By using photos taken by UAV, we can produce 3D maps and simulate flooded areas. Even when Godzilla appears, we can still protect our nationals with this technology. In the past, paper maps are mainly used for grasping the topography of the affected area, forward movement routes for personnel and units, areas of operation, and so forth. However, with the recent advances in information technology, information about topography collection has the potential to be accelerated and refined to a higher degree. Based on what has been described up until now, there is an endless need for knowledge to accurately grasp the future changes in cities and technology, and it is necessary to frequently update the current plans for Tokyo inland earthquake that are being maintained now in order to save as many lives as possible. In addition, to ensure this plan can be put into action, it is extremely important that training be continued and that headquarters and unit maintain and improve their response capabilities without fail. As time is limited, I would like to say one more thing to finish the explanation. Tokyo became the political and economic center of Japan in 1603 when Edo shogunate was established, and since then had suffered more than 20 catastrophic disasters, including the eruption of Mount Fuji. However, with the effort of our ancestors was reconstructed each time. It is clear that what made that possible was a strong sense of harmony and solidarity, and awe and respect for nature, which are characteristics that the Japanese historically nurtured. On the other hand, we cannot forget about those countries that provided assistance and cooperation when our nation was in distress. 90 years ago, on September 1st, Japan was still on half a century into becoming a modernized nation when a magnitude 7.9 earthquake struck the capital of Japan. At the time, 7% of the total population of Japan, which was 4 million people, lived in Tokyo, and more than 100,000 people killed, and 300,000 houses were either collapsed or burned down. And it's not hard to imagine that Japan was at the brink of despair. There was no relief headquarters because Japan was in adverse conditions with despair and confusion. However, a nation fastest in the world immediately declared support for Japan and dispatching the fastest medical team and donated $8 million of the time and dispatched Army and Navy forces filled with the world's largest relief supplies. It is unfortunate that we once fought as a rival. And 8 years ago, during the Great East Japan earthquake, was the first to come to our support, and that nation is none other than the United States of America. Today, United States is the most reliable tomodachi, the best friend for Japan, and your greatest presence is truly appreciated by us. Today, I am proud to be a panelist and to be able to attend meetings with my best friends, my tomodachi. Thank you for listening. This concludes my presentation.